away, nigga, get away. I ain't try hear what a nigga say. Headed for the top, I ain't know how to stop till the world go pop. I've been steady watching these fools talking shit like it's a daily news. Beefing niggas got petty moves, when I make them lose fatty juice. Nigga, yeah, on a mission, like I'm flying to the moon, dog.
Welcome back to another video. My name is Linda. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by, and if you're not new, thank you so much for continuously supporting this YouTube channel. I really appreciate your support. So in today's video, I just wanted to go through some tips and tricks on how to find student housing in Canada. So I've got like maybe six to seven tips that I'm going to go through with you. The very first one is it's always best to move into your on-campus residence. Does that make sense? So basically, if your college or university has a residence, I think the first thing you need to do is move into that, try and get a room within that residence. Why? Because I think if you're going to move on to a different housing situation, so if it's not on campus, it's going to be hard for you to find housing and understand like where this apartment is, where this housing option is, if you're not already in Canada. So the first thing to do, or this is what I did, is try and find housing on campus and then stay there for about 2 semesters, and that way you can either make friends and like figure out how to move off campus, or you could use the time to, you know, just get to know the city, the area a bit more, so that once you're moving out you kind of know your way around and you're familiar with the places. I really think it's harder to try and find housing while you are like in China or in Swaziland or wherever really you are, because it's a bit difficult unless you already know someone and they can guide you and be like, okay, this house is a better option and it's in the right area. But if you're just searching for yourself, it's pretty difficult. So I would suggest move on campus, stay for like 1 or 2 semesters, meet people, get familiar, and then move off campus. That way you're just going to make better decisions, I'd like to believe. The second thing is, obviously if you're looking for housing, you need to have a budget. So understand for yourself how much you're willing to spend to pay for rent. And also just set like different criterias of like, okay, I need to find a house that is either close to the campus that I'm going to. I know with COVID it's kind of a bit weird to think about these things because most classes are online, so that might make it even easier for you, but definitely have a budget to know that I cannot go beyond this point when it comes to finding housing, an apartment, a basement suite, whatever it is. The other thing is also, like as I was saying, build your criteria. So do you want to live in like housing that is shared, like do you want to have 1 roommate, or do you want to have like 6 roommates and like rent a whole big mansion and each person like at least has a bedroom as their private room? Or do you want to live in like a house that has like a co-ed situation, or do you want to only live with guys, or do you only want to live with girls? Like you need to have sort of an ideal list in your head of what you're looking for when it comes to housing. That way it's easier for you when you get access to the market to know what is worth your time and what isn't worth your time. The other thing that's also an option is, I know a lot of first years used to do this. I didn't do it, but I've heard pretty good and bad. Like obviously it depends what situation you find yourself in, but another option is to go for a homestay accommodation, where basically, from my understanding, homestay is basically you would stay in a house with the landlord or the family that owns the house, and then you would rent one of the bedrooms or maybe the basement, whatever room they have available. But the nice part is they would then offer you so the rent that you pay also gives you access to breakfast in the morning, so you're kind of like part of the family. That's why it's called a homestay. So you get access to breakfast, you get access to probably lunch and dinner as well, and it really helps if you're a first year and you're trying to figure out, you know, the city or town you're in, the area you're in, because they kind of gonna be like your family. And I think it's also nice if you're new and like you're the first one to, you know, come to Canada and you don't know anyone else. I think a homestay could be a pretty good option to look at. I know I didn't really like it. Actually, I didn't even know about it to start off there. But also, I already had like housing on campus offered for me, so I wasn't really too stressed about finding housing. The other thing is, for me, I wouldn't really like it because I lived in boarding school for like the longest time, and so homestay kind of reminds me of boarding school, and I just felt like I was already in university, and I really didn't want to be in a situation where I was in someone's house and like, because I'm pretty sure there are rules. That's the other thing, is like homestay, you get all these nice things, but at the same time, I think there are rules that you need to honor. And obviously that would be part of the discussion when you're sort of doing your house hunting. The other thing is also think about like, do you have access to amenities? Do you have access to, I don't know, a hospital? Do you have access to shops? Do you have access to a bus stop, if that's very important? So really just create an ideal list of like, this is what my perfect location of student housing would look like. Is it an apartment? Is it a basement? So all these different kinds of things, you need to have a list so that once you're looking, you're not wasting too much time because you know what your ideal housing situation looks like. Number 3 is where to look. So obviously because of the internet, like you have access to so many things. You have access to basically so many options. You could look it up on Craigslist. That's usually the common place that most people post and find housing. The only tricky thing with Craigslist is you also have to be careful that you're not being scammed. So that's why I really think my first point about living on campus for the first 2 semesters, and then once you're independent enough, finding a house or housing for yourself, that makes it easier because then you're used to the area, you're used to the culture and everything, and so it should be easier for you to like navigate and know when something is off. Whereas I feel like if I was put on Craigslist and I had never set foot in Canada, and I was trying to find housing, I probably would have gotten scammed. There's just so many like really, weird posts that now that I like know better, I can obviously tell like this is a scam. But like any other place, you have to just be careful, ask all the questions, and make sure that like you're satisfied with whatever the landlord or whoever this person is telling you. The other option to look at is Facebook groups. So there's tons and tons of Facebook groups where a lot of people are either looking for a roommate, or in other instances it's actual landlords posting on Facebook and saying, hi, we just lost a tenant and we need someone else to fill in the position. This is the lease. It's probably 6 months. Some people also do subletting, which is basically if you were to travel, even though no one's really traveling right now, but basically the idea is if I were to travel for 3 months but I still wanted to keep my lease, I can post on a specific Facebook group and basically offer my room as a sublet for those 3 months while I'm away, and they will help like to pay the rent, and I still get to keep my lease. And then after the 3 months, I come back and I still have access to my housing. The other place to look at is social media. Okay, not really like look at, but basically you could use your own social media to post. I think this house that I currently live in, I posted somewhere on social media, and one of my friends was like, oh, I know someone who has a house and it's available and yada yada yada. But basically you can post on your own social medias and be like, hi, I'm looking for a room, and then you can list what you're looking for, which makes it easier as well for the landlord or whoever, the roommate who's also looking for another roommate, to know if you're like compatible with each other. So it's very important to sort of have a list of like what best suits you when it comes to student housing. Oh, and the other thing is your school website. So I think every college or university in Canada should have this, or at least in my case, at Simon Fraser University, they actually had a housing blog website where I would like to assume these real estate agents or landlords had partnered with SFU in some shape or form. And so, if you have access to a website like that for your school, there will be landlords or real estate agents who are posting apartments, basement suites, like a range of different housing options for students at Simon Fraser University. So, check out your college or university international student website, or just like ask around. There's definitely usually one or two platforms where you can get access to housing for your college, for college students or university students within your college or university. And last but not least is also word of mouth, right? So, and again, this kind of goes back to my first point, which was if you're already in Canada and you're here for like 1 or 2 semesters, then I definitely think it's easier to find housing. You're comfortable, you're familiar with the place, like I've already said. But the other thing is because you'll know more people, you'll meet more people, and so you can start letting people know, hey, I'm looking for a house to rent. Do you want to come together and like, you know, find housing together? Or just through word of mouth, you can be able to get more connections and get access to, you know, the kind of house that you're looking for. I honestly didn't do this, but I do think it's an important thing to do when you're looking for housing, especially as an international student, is really be like prepared and have questions to ask your landlord or your roommate, because I think it's just like a rental agreement is usually long term, like 6 months or to a year at least. Like I've seen most housing posts really want someone who's there for like long term, and so it's a really big decision, which is why I think it's important to have questions that you can ask, you know, just to find out like what the culture is within that house. If you're going to be living in an apartment with one more roommate who's already maybe been staying there for a while, like ask them, do we have to clean, like, you know, is there a pet allowed? Like I wouldn't live in an apartment that allows pets and then next thing my roommate gets a pet, like, you know. So have a list of what you're looking for in terms of housing, and then also prepare questions. So ask like, do you guys party, like, so that you know if the housing option is suitable. Because I think it's very easy to sort of choose a house or an apartment or whatever you go and check out based on the price just because it's cheap, and then later you realize, oh, actually they allow pets in this house and this is actually not my ideal place, and now you're stuck on this agreement. Like you don't want to be in that position where you're stuck in a place and you can't move out or find someone to replace you, and you have to like sort of stay there for the rest of the year. So I think it's very important to prepare questions and interview landlords, because I noticed like in my 2 or 3 instances where I was trying to find housing as an international student, everyone is just so like, you know, ready to ask you questions like, are you clean? Do you have a boyfriend? Some people even ask if you have a boyfriend. I still don't understand why that's a question, but that's a story for another day. But basically, I've been in situations where like landlords will be like, oh, this is a house, it's only for girls, and like you can't even have like visitors, let alone like your boyfriend. They'll be like, you can't have visitors. So it's always best to ask those questions so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you've signed that agreement and you're like, this house is the ghetto, right? So ask questions. Oh, and the other thing is like, do not ever like feel pressure to make the deal right there and then. Like meet, do a Zoom call. I guess in these COVID times, like you do a Zoom call, like ask those questions, be prepared, and meet as many landlords, as many like housing options, roommates, whatnot. But don't feel pressure to say yes and right there and then, because I know sometimes people will take advantage of like international students, you know, because you don't know anything and they can tell. Also, they'll ask you like, oh, how long have you been here? And you're like, I've been here for like a semester or two, so they know that like, okay, I can take advantage of this one. Like, I'm not saying this always happens, but like in any other place, you know, people will take advantage of people who are easily taken advantage of. Is that a thing? Is that a word? Anyways, you get the point. So don't feel pressure to like take it, because I know sometimes landlords will say, oh, you know, I've got like 50 people who are interested, so tell me by the end of today. If you're not feeling comfortable, just know that house is probably not meant to be for you, so that's okay. I actually just remembered something that I didn't put on the list, which was super important, so I'll just bring it up now. Usually landlords will ask for a reference. They will also ask for like, you know, like some sort of thing to like support that you have financial resources. Of course, like you can always tell them, oh, my parents are paying for the housing. Usually they're understanding, but usually they'll want like a reference from, you know, your previous landlord. And some may not even want to take someone if they just, you know, packed their bags, moved from home, and then moved to Canada, and then they're trying to find an apartment. They might feel like you're not independent enough. But if you've lived on campus, you could always get like your residence advisor or someone to say, hey, Linda's a very good resident. She lived with us for like 2 semesters, and so you can trust that she's, you know, independent and like she'll take off her space, yada yada yada. So that's why, again, I think it's best to live on campus and then decide to move after like, even if it's just 1 semester. Okay, so it's good that I remembered that point. The other thing is, okay, so I'm back. I just was saying before I left that when you're setting up viewing appointments, obviously I'd assume everything's online and everyone's using like Zoom calls and whatnot, which I think is pretty tricky because I've been in situations where I liked the post on Facebook or Craigslist or whatever, like the house or the room looked really nice. And then when I went to see it like physically in person, I didn't like the way it looked. Like it looked very different from what was on the post. So that's the tricky thing about like looking for a house during this time. But I guess, you know, it is what it is. You just have to make a plan with whatever you have. Oh, the other thing, this is very, very important. When you're looking for housing, and if you're looking at basement suites, I would suggest, this is kind of hard if you're obviously not here, but if you're in Canada, I would really, really highly suggest that you look at a basement suite during the day, because if you go and check out a basement suite in the evening or at night, usually they'll like turn on the lights. Of course, they have to so that you can see the room. But I really have this theory in my head that basement suites look so much nicer in the nights because all the lights are switched on and it just looks great, you know? And then during the day, you'll find that the basement is dark. I don't know about you, but I don't I don't mind a basement, but I feel like you should have access to daylight. Of course it's not as sunny now, but still like that makes it even worse. Like for me, I just personally wouldn't live in like a basement that's super dark. I lived in one for like a year, so I know what I'm talking about. So don't do that, because that's what I did. I chose that basement. I really liked the house. I liked the people I was living with, but I really didn't like how dark it was during the day. And so it just, yeah, I don't know. I want to have lighting into my house. So if that's a thing for you, keep that in mind. Always check out basement suites during the day so you see how much light comes into that basement and if you're happy with the amount of light it receives. I would also just suggest, if you're going to be studying at Simon Fraser University, specifically the one in Burnaby, Again, because of COVID, most things are online. But if you were like anticipating that in 2021 you can start having in-person classes or whatever, given there's a vaccine, yada yada yada, I would suggest looking in the areas, in these specific areas: Burnaby, Coquitlam, and Surrey. Surrey is a bit far, but it's one of the cheaper areas to look into. Coquitlam is like right in the middle. Burnaby is perfect because it's like sort of halfway from downtown area, Vancouver, but it's also still like a bit affordable. So I'd say those are like the top three areas to look for in terms of like where to live and where to find student housing if you're an international student and you're just gonna like try and find housing from the get-go. And then what I'm also gonna do is, excuse me, the other thing that I'll do is I'll drop the name of the Facebook groups that are available in Vancouver where you can like start looking for housing. And as I said, just post and be like, hi, I'm a new student and I'm trying to find housing. There'll also be Facebook groups where you can just post and look for a roommate. So that's pretty cool. And like you just have to introduce yourself, tell people who you are, what you like doing, and then if people think you guys are compatible, then you'll find a roommate, or you'll find the perfect housing option for you. So that's all I had in terms of my experience and like what advice I would give to an international student who's trying to find housing in Vancouver. And I hope this video was helpful, and if you did like it and found it in some way helpful, please don't forget to give it a like, don't forget to comment, and don't forget to share. And as always, do not forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.